highest voting bloc in the country, not being the highest number of people vying for office, certainly something of concern. That and a number of other issues to be addressed in this conversation with Chamberlain in Abuja. Chamberlain.
Well, yes, we're starting from a youth perspective, and why not? Because after all, you've seen the register. They hold the chunk. They lead the block, as a matter of fact. But how that plays out at the end of the day will be a huge factor. We've got Hamza Lawal, as you may have seen, that welcoming slide here with us today. He is the Chief Executive, Connected Development, and founder, Follow the Money. I think I like the second part.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming on.
Sure.
So, youth, what is going on? I mean, yes, we've seen the register. They're in the front lines now, so to a large extent, they will determine how things play, if they all come out on that day. So, what is going on at the moment in terms of the thinking? What do they plan to do? I know, can they ever even be on the same page? Should anyone expect them all to be on the same page?
Well, this is politics. And honestly, we can't all be on the same page. Even as family members, when you see siblings, they're not always on the same page. But what we hope and what we're working towards is to have some consensus amongst ourselves, where we probably would present a consensus presidential candidate as young professionals, as women and people with disability. And this consultation ongoing, we're talking to ourselves, you know, we're saying, let's not continue to work in silos. For once, let's unite ourselves and our voice. Maybe draw inspiration from the Not Too Young to Run movement that we led and say that, see, we're all collectively affected. And maybe if we come together, and now we're the voting bloc, you know, we're the powers that determines the outcome of this election. So why not, you know, launch on that powers and have a negotiation that is driven by values, by principle, and true representative, where there's intergenerational dialogue, solidarity, and equity. So this is what we're looking at, you know, where young people would inform the outcome, but then have one collective voice, present a candidate that is consensus-driven, and then deliver that candidate to the Nigerian people.
Okay, because I was wondering, wow, consensus candidates, where is that coming from? Because last time they tried it, remember those presidential candidates who tried to come together?
That was the primaries in the political party. I'm not a member of a political...
This is after they have emerged.
After. So this is us now looking at all the candidates presented by the political party. You know, we'll look at them, we'll set our terms, and we'll have conversation with them. You know, we would sit with their people, we'll sit with this candidate, we'll ask them salient questions, they'll give us their responses, we'll continue to dialogue, and before the election, we'll come public. You know, we'll come to you, Chamberlain, and tell the Nigerian people, this is our candidate. And we'll tell the Nigerian people clearly why, and then we'll convince them to vote for that candidate.
Isn't that going to be risky? Because a couple of things play out here. In politics, look, you never say never. You know, we've seen over the years, they will promise you, you know, heaven and earth and deliver very little. So if youths commit themselves to that and that fails, isn't that going to, you know, chip away at the confidence that they may have, say, after all, we supported this candidate, whoever that is. If the candidate doesn't perform, how would that play out?
Chamberlain, you know, change does not come without risk. Life itself, it's about taking risk. And I believe that there's a lesson that we would learn. We cannot sit down, fold our arms and say, okay, there's a risk, you know, to this innovation. There's a risk to this thinking. And since there's a risk, let's just leave Nigeria to be on autopilot and let the outcome decide itself. No. We want to take the future of Nigeria into our hands. We want to decide the trajectory. The current script is not working for you and I. It's not working for the Nigerian people. We need a new script. And for us to get a new script, we must collectively flip the script and ensure that we decide what becomes of the new script. A script where we would design it together and implement it together. Yes, I know that most politicians are not trustworthy. They are not men and women of their words. But there will be some level of agreement. There will be some level of understanding. Maybe we would not get everything we so desire in 2023 when we present a candidate and deliver this candidate. But I believe there's time. You know, see, there's 2027, there's 2031. My own vision and the hope and aspiration of Nigerian people is that someday we would have a youth presidential candidate, a young person who would lead Nigeria, someone with trajectory, with track record, with values, with capacity, with competence. Someone who has taken nothing and turned it into something. And I believe we have those people. But, you know, the current tides is not working to ensure that we deliver and provide that kind of person.
So what happens to this being organic? Because there are those who say, wait a minute, I thought that the youths already made their voices heard on social media, saying we're going to support a particular candidate. In fact, some of them say we're going Labour. Haven't seen what PDP and APC will do. So doing this, wouldn't that be tantamount to trying to coerce or take it away from the organic way and then pitch a candidate in the event that it doesn't end up with the way they're going already?
Chamberlain, let's look at data. You know, let's leave social media alone. Social media is not a political reality, and let's not get carried away. Yes, it's really exciting, this engagement. Young people have now come out and say they will take their place, and they're now rallying around a presidential candidate, which is exciting and it's fantastic. And this is what politics and democracy is all about. It should be competitive. But let's look at data, and let's look at granular data. How many percentage of people, the Nigerian people, are on social media, have access to social media and smartphone or technology device? How many of them? I'm a grassroots man. You know, I run campaigns in all the 36 states. And I'm not talking about the capital. I've been to the hinterlands, you know. When you look at the block, the main block, they're not on social media. They're not engaging on Twitter and Facebook. You know, they're offline. You know, these are the people where we fold our sleeves on our shokoto and enter canoe or enter motorbike and go and meet with them and interact with them and dialogue with them and have an agreement with them. And most of the votes comes from the grassroots. So, Chamberlain, I understand, you know, where you're coming from, but let's not get carried away. And yes, 24 hours in politics is a lot of time. But for me, you know, I'm looking at the realities of politics. You know, I'm not a, you know, I can't be excited about how politics have evolved, you know, from 2015 to 2019. I'm getting older, so I can't be carried away by, you know, social media shenanigans. But I respect their views, and I understand where they're coming from, and that collective anger. And yes, we need that. And I like the fact that now politics is a bit competitive, and people are actually changing the tides and setting the pace for engagement. And you know, I can see that this social media conversation is also informing how candidates are presenting their ideas, how they're presenting their manifestos, and what they want to deliver on. But I'm not carried away by social media. You know, I'm actually engaging people with permanent voters card. And I'm leading a campaign on PVC collection drive. You know, I'm talking to women, I'm talking to young people, you know, I'm talking to people with disability that have PVC. And for me, it's collect your PVC. Commit down election day, you come out and vote. And because I'm also doing this, Chamberlain, so my good friend Moses Yasi Asiloko and I will sit down and say, okay, we're running a PVC drive. What next? So they collect their PVC. And a lot of people are asking me, so Hamza, we have our PVC. Well, who do we vote for? And so there's no room for mistake. Yes, we will take risk, we'll learn from it, but there's no room for mistake because this is about life and death, Chamberlain.
So how is this going to play out? Because naturally, over the years, in terms of how people vote, there are several factors that determine how people vote.
Yes.
Now, you get in there on the day, you have people who will be induced and they will vote on that day. You get there, you have people who say, no, I'm voting this way because look, this is personally close to me, either by family, by ethnicity, whatever. This is close to me, this is what I want. You have traditional party members who will say, well, look, no matter what happens, I'm going to stick with my party. And then you have the idealistic people who say, no, this is about principles. We need to change this country. We've done this, we need to try it this way. So how do you plan to galvanize all this?
Chamberlain, I don't have all the answers. But all I can tell you is when you go on the streets and you ask an average Nigerian, what are the things that are dear to you? First, they will tell you healthcare, that they pay from out of pocket. Second, they will tell you that, oh, their children cannot go to school, they're dropouts. Or, oh, they cannot afford to pay for their children's school fees. Or they can't even afford to take their children to the school that they want to. Thirdly, they talk about shelter. Fourthly, they talk about, oh, we cannot even feed our family. You know, even with the food we have, they're not nutritious meal. So be it you voting because of principle, or you're voting because you're a party loyalist, or you're voting because, you know, you have an affiliation with a candidate. Each and every one of us is, you know, affected by the same thing. And lastly, Chamberlain, is insecurity. everybody say, oh, I don't feel safe. I cannot go to bed closing my eyes. I can't travel 30 kilometers within Nigeria without the fear of being kidnapped or attacked. So, and this is, I believe, would be the uniting force for us. And our message is clear. And when we engage these candidates and their camps, these are what we're bringing in the front and say, how would you deal with this decisively? So it's not about telling us all this fancy English. If you say you're going to deal with insecurity, what is the timeline? How would you do it? If you say you're going to create jobs, and it's not also about creating jobs. It's about creating green jobs and sustainable livelihood. If you're going to do that, how would you do that? If you say you transform city, how would you ensure they're not underwaters like some of our town and state currently? And you're going to give us clear roadmap with timelines. And then for us, we're also conscious. How would you mobilize these resources, knowing that we're now buried in debt servicing? How would you mobilize these resources? Where would you get the funding from? It's going to be PPE. It's going to be a foreign direct investment. Then how would you ensure that we pay this debt that we're owing? So are you going to increase taxes? So who are you taxing? Are you taxing the old woman in the market, and it's going to inform double taxation, or you're going to provide, or it's going to be luxury tax? So how are you going to do this, and how are you going to ensure there are no leakages? Because currently we still experience leakages, and just recently, Channels TV, working with partners, uncovered one of the biggest heights in the oil and gas sector. So how are you going to deal with this? Are you going to be a reactive government or a proactive government? So these are going to be clearly stated. But again, everything is not cast in stone. I don't have all the answers. And because I'm not a politician, I'm upright and very straightforward, Chamberlain.
So how far has this gone in terms of the preparations and putting things in place to make sure this happens?
So Chamberlain, this conversation actually started before the primaries. So we started the Green Nigerian movement. Before then, there was the We Together movement. There's so many other groups working in different silos, and each and every group have their own agenda. And for us, we're inspired by environment and climate change, knowing that the environment is everything. And that's why we say, we're the Green Nigerian movement. And we launched in the Southwest at that time, and also did another launch in the Northwest. And so after the primaries, and for us first, we wanted to inform what even becomes of the primaries. So it's not about transactional. And we were saddened that, this primaries were informed by transaction. A lot of people were disenfranchised. Some of this list got changed at the last minute. It was really sad. And we said, see, as much as we're sad, we cannot wallow away in sadness. We must bounce back. And I have millions of followers, online and offline. And I must inform them and educate them and continue to carry them along. So for us, we've started 2 years before now, engaging and consulting. But now we're at that phase. We're talking to different groups and different blocks to say, let's even, come together. Within ourselves, we must form, that alliance. After we form the alliance, then we'll start talking to, the various camps to inform what becomes the presidential consensus candidate.
All right. I wonder what Bukky and Ayo are thinking at the moment, guys.
Let's start with something that we've done before, Chamberlain, because I remember, there's something that you often say. You know what someone will do by what the person has done before. So, Mr. Lawal, my question to you is along that line. The last time we had this kind of collaboration, so to speak, was in after the annulment of the 1993 elections. Most of the people that forced the military to a standstill, so to speak, were young people. Many of them are not in politics now, even though some of them are. The question that I'd like to ask you is, what would be the motivation for the staying power for youths? This Fourth Republic took 6 years of young people, civil society organizations, socio-political organizations staying on the issue. But you and I know that those days have since gone. There was no social media then, there is social media now. So the conversation around how to keep youths patient and focused on this ball, how do we achieve that? Because unless we do that, I don't know how long that'll last.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the annulment, the 1993 annulment, or election annulment. And there is lesson to learn when you look at, you know, the pre-military and post-military era. And I'm glad you also mentioned that a lot of the activists that led this campaign, most of them did not join politics because they felt, oh, you know, let's leave politics for the politicians. And what happened is that some of the people who had khaki, you know, removed their khaki and wore babariga. And as young people, we've learned from history because we cannot take our country to prosperity without learning from where we're coming from. And I'll tell you upright, you know, we want people in government that understand that, see, it's about intergenerational dialogue and equity. We want someone who would say, you know, the young people have a role to play. They have numbers, they have energy, they have ideas, they have innovative ideas. And as older people, you might say, oh, you have experience. But then experience driven by values, driven by competence to deliver on the mandate of people. So we want that fusion amongst young people and old people, because I'm sure a lot of people say, so what is the need for the youth? Why should we have a consensus candidate? See, power is created because right now, why all this campaign is happening is because President Muhammadu Buhari is transitioning. Our democracy is evolving. Our politics is also transitioning. In 2023, we would have a new president. So what it means is no one actually have power right now. And with all of this process, what informs it is power would be created at the polls with the ballot. And when it's created, what we want to see is let this power be shared. Let it be shared so there is inclusion, so that there is no gap within the society itself. And that's why we're running this campaign, and we're hoping that we will get a consensus candidate, a presidential consensus candidate, that when power is given to him or her, this person would share this power across the country, where there is inclusion, where there is a sense of belonging, and where there is unity of purpose. And with that, we can bat a new vision for our country, one that we can all identify with and work towards achieving it.
Mr. Hamzat, I want to start with the views of some of the youths who have been on this program in the recent past. And they have expressed the view to the effect that the youths cannot make significant change unless they begin to get on board the political space by registering specifically with the political parties. And I also couldn't miss, you know, what Yaga Africa said about some of the factors that excluded the youths from the process in this 2023 electioneering season, you know, the advent of it. And one of the things that was mentioned was the high cost of forms. Youth candidacy is good, but you have also rightly observed that 2027 is coming, 2031 is coming. What is your movement doing to prepare for that time such that you can surmount these challenges, high cost of forms, the monetization of the presidential primaries, so that we can have not just the voting bloc, but also the opportunity to effect change with participation in governance, actual participation in governance?
I totally agree with you. See, we cannot shy away from politics, and as a political scientist by training, everything is political. But one thing we failed is to actually move from politics to governance and to good governance so citizens can enjoy the dividends of democracy. See, we cannot say we want change in Nigeria and then we'll say, oh, we remain neutral, we'll be on the sideline, or we'll be on the fence. No, now is not the time to be on the fence, because the kind of change we want to see, you know, we must actively participate in this politics, whatever that means to each and every one of you. But we must participate actively in this politics. And yes, you see, my message as a civic actor changed when I turned 35. And I said that each and every one of us must join politics. Let's become card-carrying members of a political party. Imagine if we have 70 million young people now identify with the political party. Don't you know that we can actually start that change even within the process and the system itself that inform what becomes the outcome of this party or the candidate of this party? And I say to young people, do you attend ward meetings? Do you attend local government meeting? Do you attend state meeting? And that what would inform what becomes the national party meetings? And you don't even have to attend as a card-carrying member of a party. You can attend as an observer. And I know, yes, we're mobile upward, we're always in city center trying to, get daily substance or subsistence rather. I think it's important that we go back to the grassroots, and each and every one of us is from a community. And I'm also conscious, you see, in 2019, I said something on Channels Television that, I got a lot of backlash. And I said, we started very late. Because at that time, there was a conference called the Youth Decide. And at that gathering, I said we started late. Politicians, after 2015 election, they started preparing for 2019. And after 2019, they were preparing for 2023. But as young people, we sadly, we always start late. And I think one lesson, and hopefully we're able to deliver on the presidential consensus candidate, is we need to start immediately after the 2023 election so that we can inform 2027 and 2031.
Let's end with this. So, because the way some people understand this consensus candidature matter is people work, politicians or parties, some parties, if not most, work from the answer. So they already know where they're headed, and then they just do every other thing to key into that. This is not going to be the case.
No, this will not be the case. And interestingly, even people within the party and the party structure, politicians are very tricky. They're with you, but they're not with you. And that's why I say 24 hours is a long time in politics. And for us, this also is an inspiration. That, see, everyone in the party does not also agree with the decision of the party. And for us, that's a gap that we must cash in on. Let's talk to each and every one of them and have them work for the youth presidential consensus candidate.
We'll be interested to see how this plays out because we'll keep tabs on that one. Thank you very much indeed for coming on. Hamzat Lawal is the Chief Executive, Connected Development, and founder, Follow the Money. We will be back in just a moment. They're still talking politics, though, so stay with us.